Welcome, everybody, to the High Tag Hooligans Wrestling Podcast Show with myself, Aaron, and Tom. Again, we're continuing our partnership with Capital Championship Wrestling ahead of their big show on October the 7th. That's October the 7th up in New Jersey. And hey, it's two shows in one night. We got Misery and we've got Nightmare. And we've got a nightmare for someone on that night. It's the one and only Kaia McKenna.
I don't know if it's going to be a nightmare for me, but it's definitely going to be a nightmare for my opponent because you want to dodge me, that's fine. I've had another month and a half to sit around getting pissed off about it. So,
hey, I tell you what, I saw someone call you out on Twitter, and we're going to go ahead and bring her up right now. Miss Paris Vandale was calling you out on Twitter, and she said that she was going to make your night miserable come October the 7th. So talk to us a little bit about that.
well, I have no problem with her trying her damnedest to do that, but it's pretty simple. I'm going to beat her down, and I'm not just going to beat her down. I'm going to beat her down and put her into the ground. Like, there will be no coming back from the fury I'm about to unleash, right? She will be beaten into the ground, and she'll be covered in unconsecrated soil, right? Yeah, no hope. This witchy, she's got a little karma to let out.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. A lot of vengeance on the Misery and Nightmare, Tom.
I I don't even know. Like, once you do that to somebody, do you feel bad afterwards? Do you suggest
No,
certain crystals that they need to put around them to heal themselves?
nope, that's not my problem. Other people are not my problem.
I like it.
It's that simple. It's a waste of my energy. I spent so much of my life putting energy into other people and what they did and what they were doing and not having it reciprocated. Not anymore. No, other people are simply not like what they do. It's not worth my time and efforts. I focus on myself. You versus you.
I like
It's not
it.
you versus them. It's you versus you.
Love it. Well, let's talk a bit about Capital Championship Wrestling because, like we mentioned on our show last week, it's one of the most premier all women's promotions in the U.S. right now. So, anytime that you're able to step foot in an all women's promotion, how does it make you feel?
Honored. Is that a good word for it? Because I am honored to be a part of women's wrestling. I am honored to be a part of women's wrestling at a time where it is getting more attention and notoriety than ever before. I am honored to be a part of women's wrestling with so many other very talented women that are just getting after it every week. I love that. I love that it's obviously, I think it's started up at the top and kind of trickled down to the indies a little bit, but I love that there's so many women wrestling every weekend on the indies across the country. Like, that's a real treat because when I was growing up, when I was a little bit younger, there were women on the indies and they were very, very good. Like, don't get me wrong. I love Allison Danger, Lexi Fife, like Mischief, Daphne, like Daisy Hayes, trailblazers, wonderful women and trailblazers. But there just wasn't opportunity for women in that time period like there is now. So to see all of the opportunity for women and to see so many women thriving, like, I'm just honored to be a part of it. Like, I love it. I think it's so cool.
Now, you're somebody who also does a lot of intergender wrestling as well when you're able to. But do you feel like that you push yourself more for the all women's type promotions than you do against the men and intergender? Does it give you a more sense of pride?
I enjoy being able to mix it up with competitors of all genders. I think that it's really cool that that is something that is more socially acceptable and prevalent these days because I do like to see the good match between, varying genders of people, men, women, whatever. Especially when there's a good story there to be told, right? Like, I love when there's a good story with an intergender match. But I also really just love women's wrestling. I love women's wrestling. I love competing with women. I love women's championships. I love women's matches on cards. And as much as I love intergender wrestling, I never want to see women's wrestling go to the wayside because to me it is so very, very special and so very, very cool. So I will always make a very strong effort to continue to compete against women, and uplift other women and grow with other women and support other women in this business. That will never change about me.
I think it's fascinating when I look at the Capital Championship Wrestling and the cards that they're putting on. all of the
Mhm.
talented women that are actually on these cards, and I see these flyers and posters for all these shows, and I'm like, not only do they have all these big names that are across the indies, but I really feel like they're doing a good job of lifting up maybe not so known talent into a spot where there's more notoriety for them. How has that
Oh
been for
yeah.
you so far, seeing the different talent come in?
I think variety is the spice of life, and that if you are truly as good of a wrestler as you say you are, you should be able to have very good showings with all levels of competitors, all sorts of competitors from different backgrounds, from different training schools, from different parts of this country. I don't think that there should be exceptions to that, right? So I love that CCW creates an environment for women to come test themselves against other women from varying backgrounds. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we mentioned it last week as well. It's always a revolving door, it seems like at like CCW. I mean, you never know who's
Yeah.
gonna walk through the door next. And it does, being able to have the show stream on platforms as well is bringing it into more and more households. So more and more people are getting to figure out who Kaia McKenna is. More and more people are getting to figure out who our Rebecca Scott is. And
Hmm.
that's just goes to what you're talking about of how much, wrestling has changed a lot, especially since COVID.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I started wrestling during the pandemic. So I went to wrestling school in January of 2020. And then by the time I graduated in March, like that was the pandemic had hit full swing, right? And nobody was running. So that first year of wrestling for me was very challenging because it's like, how do you become relevant? How do you put yourself out there? How do you get the experience and the reps you need when resources are limited, when shows are limited, when competitors are limited, you know? I didn't enjoy wrestling at first because my first like 10, 15 matches that I had were in front of nobody, or they were in front of wrestlers as fans. Tough crowd when you're learning for sure. And I hated it. I was like, this really isn't fun. This kind of sucks. I feel like I'm so bad. I can't figure it out because you're not getting reactions that are genuine, right? So it's like you can't figure yourself out. You can't find yourself in wrestling in that type of environment. And I was very, very frustrated by it. So when I was finally presented the opportunity to have some matches in front of fans at Beyond Wrestling, like I fell back in love with it. I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. Like, this is the process. This is growth. This is getting to perform for a live audience and gauge their reactions and use that to determine your response. Like, that is what really made me love wrestling again because I did not like wrestling when I started wrestling in the pandemic anymore. I was like, this isn't fun. But the fans made it fun for me. And that's what encouraged me to keep pushing forward.
Now, you've been on a pretty good run here, with things coming up with CCW and elsewhere. Your trajectory for your career seems to be really skyrocketing. How do you feel about where you're at right now and where you're going?
I'm very happy with myself and the work I've put in to have such a successful comeback. Um, I've said it before. I think that when you have an injury like I had that keeps you on the shelf for as long as I was on the shelf, your perspective changes a little bit because you see a lot of people being very stagnant when they're very capable. And you're like, man, if I didn't have this injury, I'd be doing this. I'd be wrestling here. I'd be getting after this opportunity. I'd be in the gym every day. I'd be training. I'd be lifting. I'd be crossfitting. I would be taking advantage of everything. And to see people rest on their laurels is very, very frustrating. And I took that very personally. So when I came back, I was like, no more of this bullshit. No more being comfortable. Like, I'm going to take what's mine. I'm going to make wrestling give it to me because I certainly put my time in and I waited with my little hands out and I got shit. I got crumbs, right? I did everything right and I got nothing but crumbs. And I just decided that was not my story and that was not how it's going to go. So since I've come back, I've just simply taken what's rightfully mine. And if anybody has a problem with it, that's a them problem, not a me problem.
Yeah, and we spoke with you a year ago, whenever you were recovering, about to make the great
Mm-hmm.
comeback, had a little bit of setback. I
Yeah.
know in wrestling it's kind of hard to be totally 100%, but how do you feel your body wise?
I will say that after an injury like that, you're never 100%. Even if you are like healed physically, there is mental damage that will never go away, that you have to learn how to overcome. So for me, a big part of the comeback was like physically, yes, surgery, stem cell, shoulders fine, physically fine, right? But mentally, like learning to trust the surgery, learning to trust the stem cell, learning to not be hesitant in the ring, learning to mentally get over the fear of being re-injured, right? Like that is where the real hurdle comes in. And I don't think that ever really leaves you. Like it's always in the back of your mind. Like, is this going to be the one punch? Is this going to be the one bump? Is this going to be the one whatever? You know? And I think it gives you gratitude. You're very grateful to be able to do it again, because there was a point in time where I was going, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to wrestle again. And that would really suck. But it also, it's a constant. Every time you get in a match, you're fighting that baggage that you will probably be carrying for the remainder of your career. It doesn't go away. Maybe if you're somebody who's been injured and it's gone away for you, that's great, please tell me your secrets. But for me, it's always in the back of my mind. It's always in the back of my mind what I've been through.
Yeah, you're not the first person who on our show who has said that. They thought it would just be a breeze to get back in there, and then the mental aspect of it really took over. The pausing, the hesitation, the
Yeah.
overthinking. So
Yeah.
how do you turn off that overthinking?
You just got to train your body to just do. Like you have to become an instinctive ass kicker, if that makes sense. Like you got to dial in, you have to be present, and you have to take control of the situation. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you know what you need to do and that you're going to go out there and you're going to do it regardless. You cannot let it control you. It's a very hard thing to do. A big part of it for me was slowing down. I felt like I was very frantic when I started wrestling again, because I was like, brainworms, lizard brain, blah, can't think. Oh God, what was I supposed to do? Oh no, this is happening. Oh my God, wait, I forgot to breathe. Now I am out of breath. So it's like there's all this stuff. And you just have to learn to ground yourself and be confident in your ability, like that you are prepared for the moment. You've done everything in your power to be prepared for the moment. And there's no reason for you to be feeling any anxieties. You just got to go. You just got to do it. Like it's commitment. You just got to commit.
Right.
So what's your end of 2023-24 look like for you as far as goals?
Honestly, I just want to keep covering as much ground as humanly possible, because I felt like I missed out on a lot of that when I was out. I never understood why people I'm from, Washington, D.C., Maryland. I'm not going to just wrestle in Maryland every weekend. I mean, you can. There's a great scene in the DMV. There's a great scene in Jersey. You can definitely do that. But I want to keep wrestling in New England, keep wrestling in the Midwest. I'm going back to the South to wrestle again. Like, I want to try to get out West. I want like witchy world domination, if that makes sense. I want to be visible all over this country as a wrestler. I feel like that is the key, right? You can be really, really, really good, but if you don't ever go anywhere or do anything or face different opponents, like you're just there doing your thing. And it's like, I want to challenge myself. I want to grow. I want to saturate. Like, I want to be on top of the world this time next year.
Yeah,
I
and
think
you
that
have.
makes sense.
Go ahead, Tom.
There's a lot of talent out there that you're going to learn something from, and you're going to teach them something. And
Yeah.
for those people that want to stay in one area, I just feel like they're cutting themselves short, and they could have a very more fruitful career than what they have. And
Oh, they
I don't know.
absolutely are. They absolutely are. But it's like you have to learn also, when you want to be successful, like I said earlier, it's you versus you, not you versus them. If other people don't want to put themselves out there, if they don't want to put the work in, if they don't want to go grind in the gym like I do or train like I do, they're not, they're an afterthought to me. They're not competition. It doesn't matter how good they look. It doesn't matter how talented they are. It doesn't matter how skilled they are. Like if they're not willing to like grind and put themselves out there and put the miles in and put the time and effort in, like they're not competition to me, right? So you just got to focus on you and where you want to be and what you have to do to get there.
The PWI 500 just dropped. Someone that Seth Rollins, is ranked number one this year. But coming up very soon will also be the women's PWI ranking list. A few years ago,
Yes.
you're on the rankings. Injury kind of played you, kind of knocked you off. How important is something like that to you to be ranked back into like the PWI?
For me, it has been a goal since I launched my comeback. I kind of knew I wasn't going to make the overall 500 list this year. I do not believe I had enough qualifying matches because I came back a little later than I had planned, and that's totally fine, and I respect that. But I did qualify, I believe, for the women's through the evaluation period. So, everything that I've been through, all of the blood, the sweat, the tears, the injuries, the pain, like all the physical therapy, all the days when I could only do 500 air squats as my workout, right? Like those hard days, like watching people that I started with pass me by. To come back and receive a ranking on that list would just make me feel like I picked up right where I left off and that the work I did paid off. I know that there are people that do not value that. They do not value that ranking. They think it's bullshit for whatever various reasons. But to me, like, Pro Wrestling Illustrated is the echelon of media in wrestling, right? Like that is our number one platform. The PWI 500 is historic. It has been around for years. Great names have been ranked on this list. I used to read it as a kid. It's like Christmas morning when it comes out. I used to love to see who was ranked and what was going on. So to be a part of that within our business is just such an honor to me. And like, I think it's very cool and I take it very seriously. And I love how it elevates you as a performer. Like, it's like, hey, this is someone people should be paying attention to if they're on that list, right? It puts you out in front of a national audience that you might not have been reaching. To make that list is huge. Like, I think everybody should have that as a goal, to be ranked on that list at some point in time. Like, it's an honor to be ranked on the first 500 that included women. Like, that's so fucking cool. Pardon my French. I love it. I just, as a huge wrestling nerd growing up, and like I used to love to consume wrestling media. It's the coolest thing, and I definitely would love to be back on the list.
Yeah, I used to run down and always make sure that was the copy I would get, my grandma's newsstand.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my friends would always, we'd argue, we'd banter on who should have been where. And I think that makes it fun for wrestling fans as well, who are diehard fans. But I will say this overall 500 list this year, it was such great a moment to see so many women actually finally represented on that 500 list, because I think it has the most women maybe of all time on that 500 list, and it was great to see that.
Yeah, I think there were 29 women ranked the year I made it. I know there's been more ever since. And as cool as that is, it is very, very cool. It's a big honor, right? Because that's like the quote unquote the men's list, I hope that we never lose the women's 250. I hope that the women's ranking list continues to be a part of this business and a part of PWI's history, because there are many women who do not partake in intergender matches for whatever reasons, but they're still very valid competitors and they deserve a space within our business as well. Like, women are so powerful. Women are so special. Women should not be striving to be equal to men, in my opinion, because women are better than men. We don't need to be equal to something that's beneath us. No offense to you, gentlemen. But it's like, I just hope that the women's list always has a place in wrestling, because I love seeing all of the girls on that list and seeing them get their flowers for the work they've put in.
I will say this, and this is just maybe being personal. Until COVID, I didn't get to see a lot of independent wrestling like I should have. But ever since COVID, my favorite wrestlers are mostly the women independent wrestlers right now. Every show we go to, they put on banger of matches. Everything's always different. I feel like they're working harder than the men sometimes, and I'm sorry to the men, but it's my opinion. And kudos to y'all for stepping out and getting recognized, because it's long overdue.
Well, and for me, one of the things that I think of is like women's wrestling in America has not been prominent for a very long period of time. So there's not like a quote unquote women's American style of wrestling that has been established, right? And I don't think for women's wrestling to be good, it has to be men's wrestling. I think that there are things about women's wrestling that make it special in its own way, right? So I would love to see the growth there continue to there is like an American women's style of wrestling, just like there's like Joshi wrestling, right, in Japan, like a Japanese women's style. I would love to see American women have their own style of wrestling that takes shape in the next couple of years. That would be really cool.
What do you think that would look like?
I think it would almost be like a hybrid of styles because there are so many women that are working over in the UK or working in Germany or working in Japan, right? Or working down in Australia. And all of those places have different influences and different styles. You have women who are working down in Mexico, South and Central America, and that has a lucha influence, right? So it would just be like finding the things within these styles that lend themselves very well to women and then embodying that as a whole within its own style.
Well, October 7th, again, in Deer Ridge Park, New Jersey. Two shows, one night, and it sounds like Paris Vandel's going to find out what it's all about from Kaia McKenna. And for everyone who has never seen you wrestle, tell everyone outside of the murder of Paris Vandel what they can expect that night.
They can expect a fight. They can expect intensity. They can expect two women trying very, very hard to win. I think to me, one of the appeals of wrestling outside of the storytelling is when wrestling feels like a fight, when it feels personal, when it feels like there's something on the line everybody's vying for. And I feel like we've fluffed it a little bit lately. It's gotten a little fluffy. And I'm not saying we should be sloppy or we should be crazy, but I think there's the right kind of ugly that's not getting hit on. And in this match, it's going to be the right kind of ugly.
Love it, love it. For everyone who wants to find out about more about Capital Championship Wrestling, go follow them over on X. They're releasing more and more matches every day. And if you don't know what X is, it's the former Twitter. I'm still learning it. I'm still learning to say X instead of Twitter. But go on over there and follow Kaia as well. She's on all social media platforms, and she also got you got a link tree, correct? It's got some shops.
I do. I do. I just put new merch up in my store this morning, actually. I'm super excited. I've not had new merch since I've come back from injury. Just so very, very excited to launch some new stuff in the coming weeks. Please visit my merch store and stay tuned. It's spooky
Awesome.
season. There'll be all kinds of fun stuff coming. I am a witch after all.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining myself and Tom tonight. We greatly appreciate it. Always glad to have you on the show. And for myself and
Absolutely.
Tom,
Thank you so much for having me.
no problem. For myself and Tom, y'all hit the subscribe button as always. Follow us on all of our social media as well. And on behalf of Capital Championship Wrestling, don't forget to go on over, follow them, and get tickets to the show so you can see Kai kick some ass. For myself, Tom, and Kai, we appreciate y'all. Have a good week.